Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Kings Lynn and West Norfolk series based around Kings Lynn, Hunstanton and Downham Market. There's 101 of them in this one. Time to go walking. Welcome back to Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, everybody. Now, I've come up the coast this morning and it's really early in the morning here, so I'm going to have to be a little bit quiet as I walk around this place because a lot of people will still be in bed, despite the fact that the sun is up and it looks like it's going to be a brilliant day here in Norfolk. Today, we're in Hunestanestun. However, we're not in actual Hunstanton town itself. We're in Old Hunstanton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. We've now come up the Norfolk coast away from Kings Lynn for this next batch, and today we find ourselves in Old Hunstanton, which is sited on a cliff overlooking the sea. The village is recorded in the Domesday Book as Hunestanestun. Later it became part of the Lestrange family estates, a name that's become synonymous with this part of Norfolk. It was they who in the 1800s developed Hunstanton as a seaside resort. This, however, is Old Hunstanton. What they developed was originally known as New Hunstanton, which is the town everyone immediately thinks of out here. This is the much older village which has a history to tell all of its own. It's also got a few quirky facts. For example, Old Hunstanton is the only village on the east coast to face west. This small settlement adjoins Hunstanton to the north. The quiet character of Old Hunstanton remains distinct from and complements that of its busy sibling, with clifftop walks past the disused Old Hunstanton lighthouse, famed for its parabolic reflector, and the ruins of St Edmund's Chapel, built in 1272. Speaking of him, it's believed that it was he who built this very village. This is a place that has no end of holiday cottages and hotels, a massive golf course, and a history like no other on the east coast. It was really early in the morning here, but that meant it was peaceful. Enjoy this little trip around a hidden Norfolk gem. Our start and end point is the Big Yard, part of the A149. That building is a pub called The Lodge, which is also a hotel. There's a few of those here, which is to be expected because we're at the seaside after all. Let's head up Sea Lane next, where we find a small playground. Within this, there's a home oak tree which was planted in 2012 to commemorate the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. That fact is confirmed by way of this small plaque. The main town of Hunstanton is sometimes known as New Hunstanton because it was developed in Victorian times. Old Hunstanton is literally much older, and you can tell that by these narrow lanes. It's still sort of a seaside resort type place in its own right though. This here, by the way, is a little gift shop called Strandline. The big difference between Old and New Hunstanton would be just how much less commercialised this place feels, if you get my drift. One of my little pet hates, you might remember from the Basketball series ages ago, I said I don't like gravel under my feet. Well, Hamilton Road West is a gravelled street. Didn't film anything on it, but walking down it is quite the experience because it's gravel all the way and it's noisy. Back to the A149, which has now become Old Hunstanton Road. This section of the road is lined with gorgeous old buildings, some of which have been turned into holiday lets or hotels. These include Forget-Me-Not Cottage and the 3-star Cliff Farmhouse, amongst others. The parish actually contains 317 dwellings, of which 106 are holiday homes. Along here there's also an old girls' school and associated schoolhouse. Both buildings date from around 1850. The old school is now used as a hair salon named the Old Schoolhouse Hair Company. Before this it was an office and also an art gallery. Then we pass Cayley Hall. This is a hotel which was originally a farmhouse. It dates from 1648 and has 38 ensuite rooms. Just before leaving civilization you pass a football pitch where Redgate Rangers play their home games. They're members of the Mid-Norfolk Youth League. You know, sometimes when I plan my routes, I always think that looks a little bit too far to walk to. Well, in this case, the church was one of the things that I was going to do in the car later, but having got to this street here, Church Lane, Church Road even, you can see it's not actually that far away. So we'll stay on our feet, I think, and we'll head down to the church next. This is the parish church of St Mary, situated on the edge of the grounds of Hunstanton Hall. It's a Grade 1 listed building and was built by Sir Hamon Lestrange in about 1300. It was extensively rebuilt and restored during the 19th century by the architect Frederick Preedy. Of course, the building was not open this early in the morning, so I've only got external shots of it here. Mind you, having said that, the churchyard here at St Mary's is arguably more interesting anyway. It contains the graves of 2 customs officers named William Green and William Webb, both of whom were fatally wounded during a skirmish on the Hunstanton coast with some smugglers. The clash occurred on the night of the 25th of September 1784, but nobody was ever convicted for their deaths. Here in the porch of the church we have a parish notice board. You can all tick off Old Hunstanton, folks. We've officially been. Now the road that runs past the church runs through these stone gates. Now that leads to a hall which is 100% private, and I won't be able to go down there and film what's there. However, I can show you what's there by way of today's special section. Hunstanton Hall is a moated country house, mainly of 2 stories, which is made of clunch and carstone. Its building history is complex, with elements dating from the 15th, 17th and 19th centuries. It suffered 2 major fires in its time, but it has been reconstructed. Its later Victorian work, much in a high Victorian Gothic style, can be attributed to Preedy. Since the 12th century, the house has been the ancestral home of the Lestrange family. In the 1800s, Henry Lestrange founded New Hunstanton as a Victorian seaside resort. Writer P.G. Wodehouse, a friend of the family, was a frequent visitor to this hall, and it even features in his 1928 novel Money for Nothing. The building is now apartments. It retains a ghostly tale to do with, of all things, a Persian carpet. It's far too long for this video, but I have linked it below. It's well worth a read, especially if you like the supernatural. Seeing as Old Hunstanton is not far from Brancaster, which had a Roman fort, it's not surprising that a Roman stone-built farmstead prospered near a spring at the bottom of Waterworks Road. These days, at the bottom of that road, you won't find a Roman farmer, but you will find golfers. This is Hunstanton Golf Club. It's a superb championship links course, rated as one of the top 100 courses in the UK and Ireland. It's been here for 125 years. Overlooking the Wash, Hunstanton is the only golf course on the east coast of England where the sun sets over the sea, providing striking views in both summer and winter. All these buildings are part of it. You can access the beach from here using a footpath across the golf course. Just beware of flying golf balls if you do. Beyond the golf course, a left turn takes us up another gravel-lined street, which doubles as a public footpath. This is Sandy Lane. Okay, we've effectively reached what is the middle of the village. It's all residential. There's no amenities on this part of the village. It's all along the main street. I'm a little bit out of breath because walking up there is actually uphill. I didn't expect there to be hills around here. I thought all this part of Norfolk was flat. How wrong I was. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come for the rest of today. At the end of Wodehouse Road, named after the writer, is a large hotel which is named after Henry Lestrange. This is the Lestrange Arms Hotel and Lodges. A 4-star hotel, this was originally a traditional Norfolk farmhouse overlooking the sea. Over the adjoining car park, you can see the sea. Hunstanton's lifeboat house is down there, as well as an old boathouse that's now a cafe. The lifeboat station has a B-class Atlantic boat and also a hovercraft. Next is the Mariner Inn, which dates back to the 1600s. It was originally the barns and stable block for what is now the Lestrange Hotel. Then as we head along the cliff, we find a popular antique centre, and views of the sea start to become a bit better. Despite being on a cliff, there are beaches here. It's not uncommon for many items to be washed up on them either. This includes marine life too. In 2011, a large whale suffered that fate, right here in Old Hunstanton. Okay, this walk has just got one more section left, and that's walking down the main street back to the car. However, after we've done that, I'm going to take you across here to the lighthouse, which you can just see in the distance there. Now, that actually doesn't belong to Old Hunstanton. It's actually within Hunestanton's parish boundaries, but I'm going to include it in this episode because it's closer to Old Hunstanton than you think. You know, it's not that far across there to actually walk to it. And it makes more sense because the Hunstanton episode will be considerably longer than this. So I may as well include it here, seeing as we can see it. But before we do that, walk down the main street to finish this one off. Back to the big yard, and here's a big landmark. This is Old Hunstanton's Village Hall, which was built as a reading room in 1887. After World War II, it was used as a social club. After suffering a period of decline, it was renovated in 2017 and was officially opened as the Village Hall in 2021. There's a war memorial tablet here on its wall. The road we're on, by the way, leads to Home Next the Sea. In times past, the main road ran past the church and in front of Hunstanton Hall. Next, we have a shop, which is also a post office. In its wall is a notable postbox, one more to add to the collection from the time of George VI. The shop was originally a pub. It was built as the Lifeboat Inn in the early 18th century, according to this plaque on its wall from the Hunstanton Civic Society. And after a walk that took just over an hour in the ever-increasing sunlight, our last stop is a bus shelter outside the lodge, where we began. And if you do need a bus here, it's the number 36, which runs from Kings Lynn. And these bus timetables have got a map. You can see how far away we are from Kings Lynn here. There is Kings Lynn, and Old Hunstanton is up here. And the 36 runs along the coast, like this. And it ends up in Fakenham. And for our next few episodes, we'll be following the route of the 36, so we will see it again. We'll be taking on these areas here. So yeah, the number 36 will feature again in future episodes. Okay, we are done with the walk around Old Hunstanton, but of course, as I mentioned earlier, I've still got to take you to the lighthouse. So here's the rest of Old Hunstanton, and then we'll go and see the lighthouse in the flesh. This lighthouse is one of the most famous in the world. It was built at the highest point available on this part of the coast, on top of Hunstanton Cliff. It guided vessels into the safe water of Lynn Deeps. What makes this so notable is that it was the first in the UK to use a parabolic reflector. It was devised and installed by Ezekiel Walker, who later went on to advise the Northern Lighthouse Board on installing them in lighthouses around the coast of Scotland. It's now a unique holiday cottage, and so too is this building. This is the old Coast Guard Lookout Tower. Built in 1906 as a Marconi wireless station, this played a prominent part for intelligence during both World Wars. In 1976, it became a maritime museum, which eventually closed. Next to both buildings is the Clifftop Cafe and Beach Shop, which overlooks the sea, and is handily placed right next to one of the area's plentiful car parks. And also here on Hunstanton Cliff, you've got part of a ruined chapel, and there's some information here about it. So let's see. This is the archway that remains. There you go. And here there's a story behind it. So this is to do with St Edmund. Born into the Woofing family who had ruled East Anglia for over 200 years, Edmund spent his youth in Saxony and, according to legend, came ashore beneath Hunstanton Cliffs in 855 AD to claim his kingdom. Shortly after his arrival, the 14-year-old was crowned king of both the Northfolk and the Southfolk. That's what we know today as Norfolk and Suffolk. The kingdom prospered under his rule. After 14 years of peace and prosperity, Danish invaders arrived, and following a bloody battle on Thetford Plain, Edmund was forced to retreat. Unwilling to forfeit his Christian religion and rule under Danish law, Edmund surrendered himself and his lands. His captors tied him to an oak tree, whipped and beat him. His continued refusal to give up on his faith saw him shot with arrows and beheaded. His head was taken to the forest and hidden. Legend has it that when his supporters sought the location of his head to reunite it with his body, they heard a voice calling and discovered a wolf with the king's head, unharmed, resting between its legs. As the last member of the Woofing family, the little wolf had his protector. This memorial chapel was built in about 1272. You can find 9 stained glass windows depicting the life of St Edmund in St Edmund's Church in Church Close, which will be somewhere in Hunstanton itself. So when we do Hunstanton, we will have to find that and find those stained glass windows. But for now, of course, we've got this chapel here on Hunstanton Cliff. So yeah, very interesting part of Norfolk this, and there's lots more to come. I'm a little bit disappointed, by the way, that you can't really see the sea from up here. I imagine you can from the lighthouse and from the Coast Guard lookout, but these sort of bushes and trees and things are in the way. I mean, if I stand up here a little bit on the edge of the ruined chapel, you might be able to see the sea. But don't worry too much if we can't see much of it, because in these next few episodes out here in Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, we will be seeing the sea quite a lot. So, you know, people out there who like the sea will have plenty to go at. Anyway, for now, this has been the parish of Old Hunstanton, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.